Welcome, everybody, to the September edition of the Forest Park Southeast Neighborhood Association meeting. Going to start with ground rules as always. If you are online and have questions, please enter them into the chat. No interruptions, please. If you have questions, raise your hand. We can take them after the speaker has concluded. And as always, behave with common courtesy. We've got a packed agenda today. We'll start out with public comments, go into the treasurer's report. We have Officer Walker here with crime and safety report, an update on 2025 association board nominations and elections. Those are coming up. We'll go through some events and some news. Cammie will talk about a grant that was awarded to us to beautify Shoto Park. We'll quickly go through some board updates. And then we have several of our alder here to talk about charter amendments, as well as President Green, who will talk about short-term rental tax. So before I start, does anyone have public comment? Anything they'd like to share? Yes?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who was involved in the gathering at the weekend.
Oh, yeah.
It was excellent. Thank you.
Fun. Appreciate that. Treasurer's report. Do you want to cover it?
Yes.
All right. Come on down.
Yeah, very simple. We didn't get any dues or donations this month. That'll change for the next one because it's the one for Great Gathering. So the ending cash for August is $2,561.30. And that, like I said, that's going to change a lot for the next one because of the Great Gathering and all the donations and then all the costs as well. So if you would like to donate, you can give cash or check to me or Dan or any member of the board, and we'll get it deposited, and we'd really appreciate it.
Thank you, Evan. All right, crime and safety report with Officer Walker.
Hello, everyone. I did print out you guys calls for service in your neighborhood, along with some notes. They're out scattered out on the table, so if you want to look over them, you can. For those of you that haven't met me before, I'm Officer Nicola Walker, your guys' neighborhood liaison officer. The information I gave you is just pretty much some of the information I've received from you guys or just on our end. Some of the complaints that I got were about some parking violations on Shoto today that I'm going to follow up on this week. We had some issues on Gibson with some parking and someone working on cars in the alleyways, and then some suspicious people on Gratiot. Another thing that came up that I put in red are issues with people putting cones and chairs and those things in the streets, kind of pick it up in some of my other neighborhoods. So it's like a reminder to you, your cones can be tossed in the trash can. We can toss your chairs in the trash can. It is an ordinance. So if you're putting things out in the streets to reserve a parking, we can toss those to the side, and those can result in you getting summonses and lead up to an arrest if it continues. I put some information on there also regarding some of the arrests that we made relative to some of the businesses that were burglarized on Manchester. So you got a quick update on that, just if anyone had any questions about any of the burglaries that happened with the businesses. I put a little spill in there for you. Also, Forest Park Southeast is continuing to be one of our mission zone areas, and that's just basically right here. We're going to be out in the neighborhood. The officer's going to be doing business checks, direct patrols when they're coming down the street, whether they're driving or walking, they're calling out in the area, those things, those type of things to kind of deter the crime in the neighborhood. So you may see a lot of officers rolling through your neighborhood during the day, first shift and second shift. We do have officers coming in on overtime to also do this. And that's just to get the calls up and, our hopes to keep the crime out of your neighborhood. Weekly information is what I give out every week, the cost for service. That's also in here. If anyone wants to get that information, you can reach out to Dan. I think he'll do a blast where with that information for some of the residents. I don't know if they reached out to you for that information, but if you would like to get it, just reach out to him. He can get it sent to you, sent out to you. And then I put some information on here relative to the non-emergency number, because a lot of people were calling saying they was calling non-emergency and they have issues with getting through. So I kind of went through there and put down the steps, you know, what will happen when you call it. So hopefully that will, help you guys when you are calling the non-emergency number. I also put in there a couple of sheets, that you will find on SLMPD's website. They did update the website, so you'll find, a few other things and some other information on there. If you wanna look up, you know, crimes in your neighborhood, another neighborhood, another station, you'll be able to find that information on there. Lastly, we do have a trunk or treat coming up next month, and I also put that flyer in there. So if you want to pass it along, bring the kiddos out, we will be doing that, as a whole in South Patrol. So it'll be the first and second district putting together a trunk or treat. This will be our second annual trunk or treat, with us going, in with the first district. I know we did one before just at South Patrol, but this will be us again, second year, partnering up with the first district. Other than that, that's pretty much all I have. If you guys have any questions for me, any concerns or issues, please email me, call me, reach out to me, let me know what's going on, if you have any concerns or anything going on in your neighborhood.
Thank you, Officer Walker. Jump into some events and some news. Yeah, thanks to everyone who came out to our annual community event, the Great Gathering on Saturday. I think it was a blast. Thank you to Washington University Medical Center Redevelopment Corporation for the donation to help us pay for all the meals from Speedway Eatery. Thanks to Park Central for donating for sponsoring Celia, who did the tunes, as well as provided the sodas and waters. And it was a great night. And of course, the beer that was donated by Urban Chestnut, can't forget that. Always looking for hands to help out. It's a big event and we love throwing it every year. If you are interested in helping coordinate next year, looking for sponsors or helping plan a bigger event, reach out. Would love your help. This weekend, we have our monthly litter cleanup. It's been moved from the fourth Saturday to the third Saturday, as we have a couple other things planned at the end of the month. We'll pick another corner of the neighborhood to clean up. We'll meet at 10 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. and we'll meet at Newstead and Manchester. All the tools will be provided. We just ask you bring your hands. That would be great. Oktoberfest. Urban Chestnut's Oktoberfest is coming up in, well, October 11th, 12th, and 13th, right outside of their building. So Manchester will be closed down for everyone to enjoy some German festival fare, live music, beer, and a whole lot more. And then we also have Grow Fest on the 10th or the 5th of October. That's coming up in a couple weeks. That'll be on the east side of the Grove, Manchester, Sarah, Talmadge, all the way down to Kentucky and Boyle. And then Midtown is having their cornhole tournament. If you're interested in supporting Midtown and playing some cornhole, tickets are $75 per team of 2. Includes 2 free beers or seltzers and barbecue lunch from Peacemaker. This is taking place on October 13th at Four Hands on 8th Street downtown. Sign up is by September 29th, and you can do that at midtownstl.org/cornhole. And then there's an electronics recycling event coming up on Kings Highway at the center down there. If you have any old unwanted electronics, you can bring your electronics to the site on October 19th from 8 to 11 a.m. Fee will be waived, ID will be required. Definitely take advantage of that. Quickly jump into any questions over the events? No? Any comments? No? Great. Wanted to remind everyone that board nominations and elections are coming up. They're annual. They started on January. Nominations, the elections are in November. All of the positions are open: president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and member at large. To nominate yourself, and to vote, you must be a dues-paying member. Membership, as Evan mentioned, is pay what you can. Typically in the past, it's $10, but to make it more accessible to everyone, it's pay what you can. If you're interested in running for a position, just need your name and the position you're interested in before the end of the October meeting to put you on the ballot for November. If you're interested, you can reach out to myself. I have my email here or anyone on the board and let us know. And would love to have you help out on the board. Any questions over board nominations and elections? No? Yeah?
Hi, this is Cami. I just want to encourage anyone who is interested, please volunteer. It's fun and I'm sure you don't want the 5 of us back next year. It'd be cool if we had more than one person per position running. So yeah, if you're interested, please run.
Yeah, I kind of undersell it. Thank you, Cami. We do a lot of hands-on stuff to make the community a better place. A lot of the events you see, the cleanups, the tree trimmings and flower plantings, the events throughout the year. But also we work with all of our officials here to coordinate these meetings and to help hear concerns and elevate those to, the officials who can help you out. So if you're interested in being a secretary and helping us manage our money, or the treasurer and helping us manage our money, or taking minutes, or just lending a hand in getting things done, it does feel rewarding to help out your community. And a lot of you are here today because you care about your community. So would love any support that we can get. Cami, if you'd like to talk about the grant and the flower escaping that'll be happening at Shoto Park. I have all your slides.
Yeah, we'll just, yeah, so officially heard that we were awarded the grant, just under $1,500 to plant a bunch of native plants, shrubs, trees at this southwest corner of Shoto Park. These are just the existing conditions, and to not overwhelm ourselves, and also because we wouldn't have enough, like the $1,500 max wouldn't cover everything. We are just starting at the west end and the east end to beautify the area by the Shoto Park sign and also beautify the area by the main entrance to the park. This is the proposed plan with lots of native plants. Will probably make more sense when we get to the photos, just get to the photos of the plants. I've got some shiny blue star, world milkweed, lots of coneflowers, rattlesnake master, eastern blazing star. Plants were chosen to give a 4-season interest, not only for us visually, but also for insects and other wildlife to have food throughout the year. We will need a lot of help prepping the area. We're gonna prep for 2 weekends, and that involves weeding and digging up the ground and making sure it's ready to plant in. Plant the plants on October 12th. So working backwards, Saturday, September 8th and 29th, we're prepping. And then the next weekend, October 5th and October 6th, prepping. And also October 6th is a monthly tree watering day at Shoto Park. So we'll be doing both there. And then planting, which everyone loves to do, will be October 12th. And that will be much easier. But we'll also really love to have you help prepping the 2 weekends before. And if you have, we'll have some tools, but if you have shovels, wheelbarrows, gloves, weeding tools, hand trowels, bring those too. But if you don't and you just want to volunteer, we got you covered as well. Hope to see you there. And also, if you can't help on any of these days, we will still need help with watering and weeding and future maintenance throughout the year, and hopefully more planting this time next year.
Cool. Does anyone have any questions?
What was the dates again? I can't see
Yeah.
the dates.
Dates for prepping are Saturday and Sunday, September 28th and 29th, as well as Saturday, October 5th. If we need more prepping, it will happen on October 6th, but that is also a day in which we water those trees out at Choteau Park, so love some help with that. And then on Saturday, October 12th, is the planting. All the times are at 9 a.m. To avoid any of the heat, and yeah, all at Choteau Park at the corner there.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any more questions, comments, thoughts, praise, hate mail, love mail? Cool. We'll move on to ward updates and then get to our guest speakers. Pass it over to Michael Browning.
Hello, everyone. It was really wonderful to see all of you at the great gathering this last weekend. This was another successful year, and not to just kind of continue to harp on it, but I think it's really testament to the work that our board here has done on continuing to throw a great event every year for everybody in the neighborhood. I know the food truck is always a big hit, and seeing people walk away with free meals for just one night is nice for a lot of families in the neighborhood that they don't have to worry about dinner that night. So it's always really nice to see, and the music was excellent too. Celia's a neighborhood resident, if you didn't know, and if you don't know her, she's great. Really knows how to entertain the kids and the adults, so it was a really good time. The Board of Aldermen has been on summer recess until very recently, so I don't have a lot of legislative updates for you today, although we will start rolling forward with a lot of things soon, so I hope to have an update for you next month on a lot of exciting things. I do want to highlight an upcoming chance to do engagement around the transportation mobility plan, though. This is a comprehensive look at how we get around in our city, and there are, I think, 4 different dates. Again, if you need these written right off there, the Saturday, September 21st at 11 a.m. That's at the Forest Park Visitor and Education Center. That's probably the one that's closest to our neighborhood. And then on September 24th, there will be one at the Central Library downtown from 5 to 7 p.m. On Thursday, October 3rd, 5 to 7 again at the Neighborhood Innovation Center on 3207 Merrimack Street. And then the Urban League is hosting one at their Water Tower campus, 2125 Bissell Street, October 10th, 5 to 7. This is really important to making sure that we have a comprehensive transportation network. So no matter how you get around, I encourage you to participate. And I'll speak a little bit more to that in a little bit when I talk about Prop T. Otherwise, the only other update I have for you is sidewalks. You may have noticed that there are orange paint markings on a lot of the sidewalks around the neighborhood. That is because if you've been on the 50/50 sidewalk list or just were on the list to get your sidewalk replaced, they are getting around to our ward this month and next month. So keep an eye out for that. And you've already probably seen some work start to get done, which is really exciting. They were behind on the work, so we appreciate everyone's patience, but we are catching up now, and a lot of these sidewalks are not even going in 50/50. A lot of them are just being paid completely by the American Rescue Plan Act money. So that's going to help everyone get around our neighborhood safer, and we're really excited about that. So that's all I have for the ward updates right now. Before I move on to talking about Prop T, though, does anyone have any questions that are ward or neighborhood specific? Nope. Okay. Well, if you think of any, let me know. All right, so this evening we are lucky to have several Alder people, as well as the president of the Board of Aldermen here with us to talk about an exciting opportunity that we have this fall to make some changes to our 110-year-old charter. So as you might know, a lot of the language in our charter is horrifically out of date. There's examples I could highlight, but suffice to say, it was written in 1914. You can imagine the room of people that wrote it and what they looked like. Yes, they were all white men, and they all lived in 1914 St. Louis and wrote it for 1914 St. Louis. So we have an opportunity. We had a charter commission that worked for a year to make some recommendations. Those recommendations came to the Board of Aldermen. We picked them up, fine-tuned them, and passed through 3 that are going to be on your ballot on November 5th. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the one that I sponsored and one that I'm very passionate about, and that is Proposition T. So Department of Transportation is what Proposition T is trying to create. And first, we are just going to go over the language that is currently in the charter. So what you see here is the current language. You'll notice that it says that the street division shall have charge of the repairing, clean, and maintenance. There's also some language in here that's a little outdated, like the sprinkling of streets. Does anyone know what that's referring to? I can tell you it's not salt. It's talking about actual water and a water solution that was put on our dirt streets so they're not so dusty. So as you can tell, a few things have changed since 1914. But what I want you to see here is that this is the mission of our street department. And as you can see, it's purely focused on maintenance right now. Next slide, please. And I didn't want you to have to imagine what streets looked like back then, so I did include a picture. This is a street picture of Locust and Tucker in 1919, just 5 years after the charter was written. You can see the only cars on the street are the Model T, which was the most popular car at the time, boasted a top speed of 40 to 45 miles per hour. You can see the street signs are on little poles in the middle of the road. There's horses and buggies, even a streetcar system, which was awesome, and I'm sad we don't have it anymore. And then you can see that people also have to make their way around the horses' droppings. So fast forward to today, and this is what the streets look like. Now, not only do those cars go faster, but there might be a cell phone in some of those people's hands, or they might be driving distracted or recklessly driving down our streets. You can see they're much wider. All the signs are electronic and above the ground now, and the roads are very, very fast. Next slide, please. And this is a picture of our streets today as well. This is TrailNet's 2023 crash report from last year. What we see here are some big numbers. And I understand that sometimes when you see big numbers, it's easy to lose the humanity in them. What I want you all to focus on is the people affected by these different modes of transportation, whether they're walking, if they're biking, or even if they're driving, that people are getting hurt in our city. And this could be your mother, your brother, your friend. And every single one of those people comes back with their life changed in our city. It's an economic impact on them. It's a personal impact if they lose their lives or they lose their mobility. So this is the kind of situation that's out on our streets right now, and I find it unacceptable. So what can we do about it? Well, first, I forgot I had this slide. This is a tough one. This is where those fatalities are happening in our city. This is a map of 4 years of traffic fatalities for non-motorized transportation. So that is pedestrians and bicyclists. And as you can see, it lands on some of the most disinvested parts of our city. So when we talk about people getting hurt, we are often talking about people who live in North City or farther down in areas like Dutchtown, parts of our city which are very diverse, but are often dominated by Black and brown people in our city who are getting hurt at disproportionate rates by our unsafe streets because the infrastructure in their neighborhoods isn't as nice. Next slide, please. So we know that the needs for our streets have evolved. They've changed. So why hasn't our street department? Why is it the same thing that it was back in 1914? Here's a current picture of the structure of our streets department. And as you can see on the left-hand side, we have our street division, which is responsible for potholes and plowing and street sweeping, as well as the traffic and lane division, which is in charge of signals, signage, and painting. So basically pavement and paint. Nothing about safety, nothing about making sure that crashes don't happen in dangerous places anymore. And then you also have the refuse division and the tow division, but those don't have less to do with streets and more have to do with city services. But that's our current streets department. So what could a Department of Transportation do? How could that change this picture? Well, first, it would give us a citywide focus on infrastructure. It would allow for decisions to be made looking at all of our city, all of our neighborhoods, and saying, where are the crashes happening? Where are people getting hurt? How can we focus our investment and our public dollars on the most dangerous places? That would include being able to create a 5-year paving plan, much like MoDOT has for our state. That's a Department of Transportation, by the way. This includes being able to focus, like I said, on where people are getting hurt. And it would also allow us to use our limited funding in our city to maximum effect by being able to provide those match dollars for federal and state grants. Instead of your alderperson having to save money year after year just to do the local match on a grant. And it can take, just so you know, 5 to 7 years to do a project from start to finish. If you think about that in terms of your elected representatives, that means that you could go through 2 alder people in that time. So what happens if the alder you like, who's working on that street project and is going to get it done and then gets unelected or decides to retire? Project can get dropped, project doesn't happen. Happens all the time. It's happened in this ward. It also means that we can effectively implement the transportation mobility plan. And that is a plan that the mayor's office is doing right now in order to take a look at our streets and see how we can make a more comprehensive network. We've never had a plan for the whole city in our city before, but the problem is that at the end of the day, that is just a plan. And there are thousands of plans at City Hall that have never been implemented. So we need a structure that can actually implement that plan, and that's what a Department of Transportation could do for us. And finally, it'll allow for us to implement our ADA transition plan. Who here has seen somebody in a wheelchair in the street because they can't use the sidewalk? It's a common sight in this city, and it's a disgrace. It's the kind of thing we should be ashamed of because we're not prioritizing the most vulnerable people in our city. And when I tell you that disability is a when and not an if for every single one of us, you should believe that because aging is part of the human life and you are going to end up in a place one day when you're not as mobile as you are today. Having good sidewalks is a really, really important part of that. Making sure that people can be protected and safe from vehicle traffic in the roads. And a Department of Transportation would not only allow us to implement that ADA transition plan in a fair and equitable way, but it also would be able to make sure we have an effective plan to fix our city sidewalks. You shouldn't have to wait for years to get your sidewalk replaced. You shouldn't have to depend on a property owner to fix the sidewalk in front of their house. And well, if they're an out-of-town landlord, too bad. You just have to trip over their sidewalk. That shouldn't be the case. So what does Proposition T do? Does it do all that? Not initially, no. That sets up the framework in order to build out that department so that it has the capacity and has the mission in order to be able to do these things. So first of all, it will strengthen the mission of the department. It adds consideration into the language of our charter that considers all road users, everyone that takes, bus, car, bike, however you get around. That will be the mission of the department to make sure you can get around safely. It'll also add planning into our department's mission, not just maintenance, meaning we could maybe come up with an idea of how to make sure that you know which street's going to get paved next year. And I'll get into that in a second. And then last of all, it will change the name of the department to be that more encompassing name. So like I said, setting up that framework and that structure, and then we have next steps that we'll have to do. And that means first of all, making sure that our departments can do this job, making sure that we're paying people properly, making sure that we are properly staffed in these departments, and making sure, of course, that these policies are actually going to make a difference for you out on our streets. Then we'll have ordinances establishing a planning division in the Department of Transportation, again, being able to look at where in our city is needed, where is help needed, where can we focus that attention. It will have ordinances establishing and reallocating funding to make sure our streets are properly funded and our sidewalks are properly funded. And that will include a reexamination of the ward capital structure. So who here knows right now how your roads get paved? Who decides which road gets paved every year? Do you know how that gets decided? Your alderperson decides it. They use either St. Louis Works money, which is a tax that goes into a fund, or ward capital money, which is a different tax that goes into a different fund. It's a limited amount of money. And then they ride around in a truck with a streets department worker and they say, oh yeah, this street's kind of bad, pave it. And that's kind of our very antiquated way of deciding what gets paved. This also means that right now we cannot coordinate with the utilities because we don't know what's going to get paved next year. So Spire, let's be honest, Spire's often the one digging in the street. Spire comes along and they say, we got work to do. We got to upgrade the system. It's dangerous. It's falling apart. We need to upgrade it. And oh no, the street was just paved because we didn't communicate with the city. So we got to dig into a freshly paved street. And then the city's just wasted its money and Spire's just made all of our streets worse. If we are able to establish a paving plan, we'll be able to coordinate with utilities. We'll be able to make sure that we are not shooting ourselves in the foot when we decide to spend our money on paving streets. And in the long run, it will save money. So there'll be an ordinance allocating funding for that, an ordinance addressing coordination with the utilities, and keep an eye out. That bill was actually just introduced today. So you'll see that on the agenda for next week. And there will be a hearing on it in October when you'll be able to see us question the street department on why they currently cannot do this. There will also be ordinances addressing the process for traffic calming. That's a bill that I'll be sponsoring. Shouldn't be the case that you have to ask your alderperson to put a stop sign or a speed hump in. It should be the case that you, the resident in this neighborhood, could just ask directly to our department, can you take a look at this street? People are speeding down it, and then they'll come out and look at it and decide what the best traffic calming measure is. Not always a speed hump. There's lots of ways to calm traffic on neighborhood streets. And then last of all, there'll be an ordinance addressing sidewalks. Because as we've discussed, the 50-50 sidewalk program is not working. Our sidewalks are not accessible, they're not safe, and it's high time we take our sidewalks seriously and as seriously as we take our streets. Next slide. So that's it. Is there any questions? I know I went through a lot of that fast. Yes, Dan.
Does it say anything about how much it's gonna cost cities?
So the question is, it does not say anything how much it's going to cost. That's because Prop T is not going to cost any money initially. We're reallocating funding that already exists in 14 different pots, those ward capital funds I was talking about. And we're not even going to move all the ward capital because we spend that ward capital on, we spend it on forestry, we spend it on refuse, we spend it on lots of different things. But in order to create a paving plan, there needs to be a reoccurring and consistent source of funding for the streets department. And so we'll be moving some of those funds over to create that plan, and there will be no new cost. It will just be reallocating money that already exists. Yes, follow up?
I'm just glad that you found this as a good hobby, but with the black and brown people in this community, before you were alderman, when you were just a neighborhood association president, the black and brown people ask you to look at the building division, and we ask about looking into some legislation that would equalize, give some equity to the people in this neighborhood who are having problems with the housing division. We're in housing court, and where our houses are not painted, and we're getting code violations, and it's hurting us. And we've asked you to do that legislation. Did you decide this project was, you know, the black and brown people want to live in our house before we work on our sidewalk? When's that gonna happen?
Yeah, I think all those issues are important. I don't think it's a one or the other kind of thing. The issues with the building division are similar to the issues with the rest of our city, and that is staffing. That we need more inspectors, we need more people that are out there able to be responsive. And to the note that you're talking about of, you know, people specifically getting targeted who generally can't afford it. I do know that this administration, the Jones administration, has put an emphasis on making sure that our inspectors are enforcing the code in a way that is not predatory and in a way that is actually helping people get those fixed. So I'm seeing changes on that every day. It's not really a piece of legislation so much as it's a way that we've been doing it, and we're changing that because we recognize that in the past people have been targeted, and that isn't right. So we do acknowledge that, and I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time here. But I do think that both of those issues are very important.
So we'll be looking for some legislation, maybe you'll look into that?
Well, I think one of the things that we'll be speaking of is another proposition that will be in front of you on the ballot, that we'll be talking about fines and fees that will help address some of the more, well, I'll let Alderwoman Velasco speak more about that, but we do have some thoughts on that. Any other questions? Okay, well, great. You all have a handout in front of you that does explain more of the details of this. And my contact info is on that handout. So if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. And who's next? Looks like you got Alderman Velasquez. And in case any newcomers are wondering, we use the microphone because we do have a Zoom audience as well. We do hybrid broadcasts. So if you do have a question that's more than a few words, make sure you wait for the microphone to come to you.
Thank you, Alderman Browning. I don't know how we're doing these propositions. I guess not in alphabetical order today, but hi, I'm Alderwoman Velasquez. No, it's totally fine. It's a great segue. I am the Alderwoman of the 6th Ward, which is right down the street, Shaw, Tower Grove South, Compton Heights, and a little bit of Dutchtown, but here I'm here tonight to talk about Prop V. My joke is not for me, but it's for vacancy. So if you just want to scroll on, see. So obviously, sir, you mentioned, you talked about the building division, some of the issues with property. One of the things that came out of the Charter Commission was, is there a better way that we can enforce, that we can help address vacant properties? So Proposition V, because we have some of the highest vacancy rates in the country, it's twofold. It's really the first step in taking a bigger step about addressing vacancies. But it's asking you, the voters, because to remove the $500 cap that's in our city charter related to fees for vacant and deteriorated properties for non-owner occupied properties. Basically, we want to be able to give stiffer penalties to absentee landlords and property owners who are not investing in the properties, but maybe speculating. It's easier for them to pay the $500 annual fee than really address the properties. So next slide, please. I just explained the purpose. Next one. So again, really, it probably shouldn't have been in the charter anyway, but that $500 cap is in the charter. So as Alderman Browning explained, any charter changes have to go to the ballot, which is why we're asking you, the voters, to remove the cap from this for vacant and deteriorated properties, for non-owner occupied properties, and then give the Board of Aldermen authority to write new legislation that will create stiffer penalties for these absentee landlords and really these properties that have been, these bad actors that time and time again have shown that they don't really have interest in investing in the properties, but would rather leave them vacant. So next slide. So this is the ballot language. Happy to share it with you if you'd like. And then next slide, please. So I know this is probably things that you've already thought about, since most wards and lots of places in the city are dealing with a vacant property somewhere, but it's better for business. One, you talked about equity and property equity. I mean, vacant buildings can bring down the value of all buildings. If you even have one vacant property in a block, it can affect the whole block, right? It reduces financial burdens for responsible property owners, right? You may be living near a property that is vacant, and so better addressing them is better, frankly, I believe, for everyone. So next slide, please. And this is just an example. This is a map of home purchase mortgage lending in the city of St. Louis. And we've got obviously the split, but I mean, basically what this slide illustrates is that we want to be able to we want to invest in all parts of the city, right? And so dealing with the issue of vacant properties can give us a chance to really promote growth and economic growth and property development across the city. Next slide, please. This is a big number, so this is not the whole number of what this ballot initiative will do, but you can just see that vacancy is costing our city a lot. This number is from the Vacancy Collaborative. We've got over $4 million a year in unpaid vacant building fees. We've got forestry, fees, $10 million, $6 million in unpaid property taxes. Again, this is not the fix-all, but I believe, and I think my colleagues believe, that this is the first step in really being able to have a sharper tool in the toolbox, if you will, because vacancy is a real issue across the city, and it's costing not just quality of life, but it's costing us residents. just some of our partners. We've been working with the Vacancy Collaborative. With Show Me Integrity and with Tower Grove CDC, among others. But really, this initiative was one that was brought, by the people, if you will, and something that to me is a common sense ballot measure that we can address, and it really is the first step. So, questions?
Have you been to Housing Court? Have you ever been and sat in a session of Housing Court? Has anybody?
I have not sat in a session of Housing Court.
Okay, well, I just want to let you know that Washington University with their Park East Development 3, they have 4 vacant properties that have been rehabbed for low-income housing. They've sat empty for 10 years. The Gills, they have 5 properties all in the 4300 block of Gibson and Arco that have been sitting empty for 10 years. There's no consequence for them. And what you're not really addressing is why is it going vacant? Because you won't address the building division. Every building that goes vacant has to go through the building division first. It has to be condemned. I grew up on Newstead and Greer in the Ville neighborhood. In '76, there wasn't a vacant lot to be found. The building division has cleared the city. And the city, to fix it, the regressives, it seems that you're always looking for a sharper tool or a heavier hammer to pound people into submission. It's really not working. If you would please go drive in North St. Louis and see what the building division laws have done to drive people out. There's a saying, you can win people more with bees with honey, right? And you guys are just always looking for a sharper stabbing tool or a heavier hammer to hit with. Doesn't seem like anyone even went to Housing Court.
Dan, do you have a question you'd like to ask?
To research it. So, when are you guys gonna do that? You gotta do your research before you start writing this stuff to fix it.
So I'd actually push back on that. So there's actually been a lot of investment in the city. And the Vacancy Collaborative is one example. There's been millions of dollars to address investing in vacant property and to move property owners along. As I mentioned, this is one tool in the toolbox. It is not the only fix. The people that you mentioned, I would have to look and see where they are on the vacant property list. The idea, again, this is step one. Step one is to give potentially more revenue to the building division, which this could do, but step one is to remove the cap. We cannot impose any harsher penalties on absentee and problematic landlords, which is our goal, without removing the cap first. The second step
More money, how does that help?
The second step
How does
is
the
to,
first
I'm
step-
trying to talk, sir. Would you like to let me finish?
How does the
Dan,
first step
Dan.
help? How
The
does the
first
first step
step-
help?
Well, I've explained how the first step helps us.
Taking more money from people that are already invested in property.
No, the first step is removing the cap from the charter. The second step, which this does, is allowing the Board of Aldermen to create new ordinances to determine what is best. It is for non-owner occupied property.
You're saying you're removing the cap because you want to increase the fees. Why else would you remove the cap?
For certain types of problematic properties, of which all you just named. We want to make sure that we have.
Increase the fees for WashU and the Gills. Those people can afford those. They can afford your increased fee.
I think maybe let's see if anyone else has any questions, and why don't you and
Well,
Daniela talk
See, I mean, if you
after?
talk about, you have a discussion and people have concerns and you want to discuss it, if you don't want to answer, or you don't like what they're saying, then you guys kind of hang up on them and say, oh, you know what? You should just shut the hell up so that we don't have to answer your question. Opposition should not be handled like that in public meetings. But
Again, you're welcome to ask questions, but we have a limited amount of time to get through the rest of our presenters. If you have questions, please write them down. We can get to them later, okay? Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, then.
Microphone.
Sorry, can you?
I'm just curious to know, if we are increasing the fines, and I think it's a
This is why we
wonderful
don't give our
idea.
public a
What happens to a property? A lot of properties that are bought by people, say in California or Seattle, that will throw, oh, look, it's St. Louis, let's invest, it's $1,000. And 5 years later, they don't do anything, they accumulate the $500. Well, we have examples of, a very common example in St. Louis is where people get this bright idea, or somebody who was stupid and sold them the idea, oh, let's go invest in St. Louis, they can get a property for $1,000. And then they're in California or Seattle, and they don't do anything with it, as the story goes. And they only pay the $500 because it's nothing to them, right? Oh, somebody's gonna buy it in 5 years for 50 grand, I'm gonna make a fortune. That's what they think, right? And they're wrong, of course. My question is, if we up that fees, oh, it's gonna go 500,000, 2,000, and then they're like, well, what's gonna happen? The good thing, they're gonna walk away with it so something can happen with the property. But where does that money go then? Is it in real estate? Is the next buyer going to have to, if they're walking away from the property and they're not paying anything, who's going to pick up the bill? Is the city going to wipe it for the new owner, or how does that work?
Well, that's all TBD, right? Because properties are owned in multiple different ways, and they may be let go of, divested in different ways, right? So it could force somebody to sell, right? Which would nothing to do with the city. That would not mean it going to LRA or it would not mean any of that. It could mean different things. So the question is really step 2, because we can't change the fee structure until we remove the cap from the charter. And so that's what this ballot initiative does. It just simply says, we want to remove this cap for these particular kinds of ordinances. We want to authorize the Board of Aldermen, the legislative body, to write new ordinances to adjust the fee schedule. I mean, so yes, are we seeking to address some of those consistent bad actor property owners? Yes. Are they a lot out-of-state owners or corporate owners who are speculating on land to move? Yes. Does this proposition do that? No. It is step 1, we can't make any new laws till we get rid of this cap. And then we have to authorize the Board of Aldermen to create new laws, and that's what this does.
Can make some new laws, but you have to do your research, and you have to make laws that take the owners into consideration, and you're not doing that. You wouldn't even go to housing court to see how it affects and how those things are affecting people. Just not doing your research, and you're writing legislation.
I offer you to send me a bill. A bill that you're talking about. You're asking us to sit here and write legislation, but we take feedback from constituents all the time, potential legislation, so send me some ideas.
I just told you some ideas. You have to address the building.
Okay,
We have to have some.
but I'm saying you can also
In
send
this
me them.
neighborhood, the houses were selling for $5,000, man. Bellington came in and bought a bunch of them from 5 to 15,000, and then they sold to the Gills in Washington University. Now these same houses are going for $400,000. But WashU is still able to hold, and Gills are still able to hold without penalty, and they're vacant on my block.
It sounds like
How is
this,
this gonna hurt?
it actually sounds like this might help your situation,
How
but
would it help me if WashU has to pay a little bit more money? They have $1 billion endowment, man. It will not hurt them.
okay, well, if you can predict the future, that's fine, but I'm just asking you all to consider this proposition. Any other
We're asking
questions?
you to please go back and do your research and come up with some real legislation that
Dan.
will help us.
You need to be a little bit more respectful, okay?
I think it's very respectful, Dan. I think it's disrespectful for you to talk to a citizen like that. I've been in this neighborhood 28 years.
Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Now over to Prop B, Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you. I didn't know I actually had a slideshow, so it's good that, thank you to the association for doing that. I was like, Jesus, I don't got a slideshow, I got slideshows. Alderman Velazquez coming with some laminated, smaller things. My name is Rasheen Aldridge. I am the alderman of the 14th Ward. The 14th Ward is, it's made up of downtown west. Downtown, it starts to go north into Carr Square, St. Louis Place, Old North St. Louis, Hyde Park, College Hill, a little bit of Fairground, and I believe I'm hitting them all, and a little bit of JBO. I will not go quickly, but I will be respectful of times. I know we have a cutoff at 7:45, and I know the president will be coming up speaking. So today I want to talk to you guys about Proposition B. Proposition B is also a charter change that came out of the charter amendment. I say, in my opinion, I believe it's probably one of the most simplest charter change of them all. Proposition B is truly the missing piece when it comes to the budget. So when you think about Proposition B, think about budget. And what this Proposition B is trying to do is trying to allow the Board of Aldermen to have more input in our budgeting process. Just to kind of walk you through how the budget process currently works. So ENA is made up of our mayor, our comptroller, and Madam President Green. And, okay, could you go to the next one? Actually, again, didn't know I had a slideshow. But the way that it's made up, the budget start with ENA. ENA then, and actually technically it starts with our director of our budget, Paul Payne. Paul Payne sends a budget to ENA. ENA looks over the budget. They have literally one hearing from the community, and then they vote the budget out. Once the budget is voted out, it goes to the Board of Aldermen. And we get the budget very quickly. So we get elected in April, and then we get the budget close to the end of April, beginning of May. And we have to have the budget done by July 1st. So it's a very fast process. Once it goes to the Board of Aldermen, I'm not gonna, actually, I believe the Board of Aldermen is probably the only agency as this budget moves that does like the most engagement when it comes to community input. So we hear from a lot of different departments. And during that process of hearing from departments, we get feedback from community residents. This past session, under the leadership of Alderwoman Spencer, we had 4 public engagement hearings. Last year, we had 3. So we try to ensure that the public has input in the process. As we hear through each department, then once we kind of get to our findings of what we want to do with potentially advocating for more resources for city services as alders who are kind of the boots on the ground and listen to residents the most. Once it gets done through going through the process of listening to the community, then alder people only have one option. We only have the option to decrease. If we make any options to decrease through a recommendation, then it goes to the Board of Aldermen, and then the Board of Aldermen has to vote that decrease up or down. What this proposition is trying to do is it's trying to put us in line with other cities as well as the state of Missouri. I see State Representative Kim Collins here, who sits on budget. This proposition will allow the Board of Aldermen to also have an increasing ability. And I put in language in the charter bill that has a balance. So wherever the board would decrease, they would have to balance it to increase too. So we cannot throw the budget out of whack. But currently, we do not have the ability to advocate for more resources for city services. We only can say where we think maybe there's too much fat in the budget. So this past budget cycle, we was able to make recommendations to ENA, but not actual concrete increases. Those recommendations was accepted this last cycle. I know I put several funds to the Circuit Attorney's Office, but we do not really have the authority to increase. This also would give the Board of Aldermen more time. Over these last several years of sitting on budget, what I noticed is we literally always get down to the last wire to be able to pass a budget. We literally have, I think this last session, or this session, we passed a budget literally a few days before the budget was supposed to go into effect. So what this proposition also would do, outside of giving the Board of Aldermen more ability to have say-so over the budget to actually just increase, it also would eliminate a process instead of it going back to ENA. So if the Board of Aldermen makes a change at any moment during the committee process, it has to go back to ENA for ENA to vote on it, for then to have to go back to the budget committee, for the budget committee to vote on it, for then go to the Board of Aldermen. So we would eliminate it going back to ENA. And once the committee makes a decision on any increases or decreases, it would then go straight to the Board of Aldermen. The Board of Aldermen would debate it up and down, and then we would send that budget to the mayor's administration. Again, I think this one is critical. It is a simple fix to the charter that was changed years ago to kind of take away power from the Board of Aldermen, not allowing them to increase. When you look at Kansas City, when you look at St. Louis County, when you look at the small municipalities like Clayton and Bell Fountain, their city council or alder people have the ability to increase and decrease the budget. But at the Board of Aldermen, we only can decrease. So this is trying to make us align with our regional municipality partners as well as the rest of the state, and to kind of cut a process so that we can be able to get the budget done in a quicker amount of time frame and not continuing to wait to the very last minute. And as alder people, like I say, we're the boots on the ground. So we're the ones who are going to the ward meetings, we're the ones who are out in the community. And a lot of times we hear, we need more money to refuse. We need more money to certain departments, but we can't advocate for it. And there's no process or there's no outlet for residents to have an input outside of that one time that it's an E&A. But when residents go to E&A and they say, hey, we want more money to maybe shelters, the budget is voted out regardless of what the communities say when it's in the E&A process. However, when residents come to the Board of Aldermen, when they come to the budget process, we literally take the input of what residents are saying and try to, make sure that we make the best decisions on top of department heads that come to the budget committee and get their input. So Proposition B, when you think about it, Proposition B for budget, it gives the Board of Aldermen the authority to increase because we only can decrease, and it allows the process to move a lot faster. I wouldn't say faster, but it allows the process to move a lot smoother, so we don't have to continue to run up against the wall and the clock of making sure that we pass a budget by July 1st. Any questions? Alderman, I'm gonna go to her first.
What's E&A?
E&A is estimate and apportionment. So E&A is made up again of the mayor, the comptroller, and Madam President, who sits on E&A. The budget starts with E&A, but when you think of like contracts and you think about a lot of funding things, they usually go through E&A. It's another board that the Charter Commission was actually looking at potentially getting rid of. I think those would be conversations that we continue to look at down the line. It is I could just be honest, I'm a straight shooter. It's kind of one of those antiquated boards that we have here in the city of St. Louis that when you talk about the red tape and the fat that we have in city government, one of the things that we need to seriously look at, because not many cities or counties have a system like E&A.
When it was conceived, it was supposed to be
This is Sarah speaking. When it was originally conceived back in 1914, it was supposed to be a checks and balance system so that power wasn't too hyper concentrated in the office of the mayor. But over time, it's kind of become a place that has made it harder for the city to respond to emergencies because you have to get 3 people on board. So,
and hopefully with this proposition, as Sarah speaks about check and balance, this is something that will give the board kind of check and balance to E&A, because again, we really don't have much say-so when it comes to the budget of the current process, to be able to take the feedback that we hear from our constituents when it comes to certain departments to actually make those impacts through the budget, because E&A is such a strong body that really when the budget happens, they just send us a budget and they're like rubber stamp the budget. We've had some success over the last couple of years, but I think this is an easy fix to be in line with other counties and the rest of our state to ensure that the board has the ability to make increasing power. Any other questions? All right, thank you all so much. I do want to thank the Neighborhood Association for allowing me and my other colleagues to come to speak about these initiatives and even setting up a PowerPoint for me. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. For the last 10 minutes, we'll have President Green talk about short-term rental tax. Sorry for the wait.
Not a problem. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. Thank you for the invitation. I'll first start by saying I agree with all of my colleagues, and I support all of the charter amendments that are going to the ballot and have been out with them, kind of pounding the pavement, helping to, educate folks about all these charter changes. But I think they're all very necessary to kind of update our antiquated government. So next thing we're going to talk about is the short-term rental tax, or what is Proposition S. So you might recall about a year ago, we passed regulations for short-term rentals in this city. Because what we've been seeing is that there's been this major proliferation of short-term rentals. And one of the negative implications of it is that it is taking a lot of rental off the market. And when there is less rental on the market, what does it do? It ends up driving up costs of the rentals that do exist on the market still. So those regulations that went in place, we're hoping the city has spent about the last year working on getting the systems in place, and in November, those are all going to go live. So basically Airbnb, Vrbo operators have until November to get in compliance with the new regulations. So once those regulations go into effect, it's time to look at the phase 2 of this. And the phase 2 is that taxation piece. And so what we're looking at doing is putting a 3% fee per occupied night on short-term rentals. So this is a fee that would be paid by the person who is booking the rental, so not by the operator. But just like if you book an Airbnb and you have to pay a cleaning charge or a booking fee, this would be an additional 3% fee that would be charged when you book your rental. The platforms would be taking care of this, so we don't we don't have to do that, or individual operators don't need to do that. But then that 3% fee, at least 50% of it, a minimum 50% of it has to go to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And so why are we giving it to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? Like I said in the beginning, we know that when there are a lot of short-term rentals on the market, it drives up rental prices. And so one of the things we can do to kind of counteract some of the negative pressures that they put on the market is to make sure that we're using that tax money to fund affordable housing. And the Affordable Housing Trust Fund funds the development of affordable housing in the city, and it also is the mechanism that funds homeless services, homelessness prevention in the city as well. So the other remaining piece of this is supposed to be used to basically help keep people in their housing. This past year at the Board of Aldermen created something called an Impacted Tenants Fund. We've been seeing more and more on issues, and you may have seen like the Heritage House situation over the winter months where pipes burst in the senior living home, and folks had to be relocated, and luckily we had a hotel operator that was willing to put people up in that. But a lot of folks, they didn't have the money to pay a new deposit for a new place. They didn't have the money to relocate to another apartment, and we see that a lot. We see where buildings or apartments are being condemned because they're not safe for people to live there. But then in condemning them, it's displacing the tenant. And oftentimes, they're lower income tenants that then can't afford another deposit, or they can't afford those relocation costs. So this Impacted Tenants Fund was created to help with that. So that if you are getting evicted through no fault of your own, basically because the place that you're living has been deemed not safe for you to live, then that we will have a fund as a city to help with those relocation expenses and help getting folks back into stable housing, because we don't want more folks out on the streets. The other program that this can help fund is the Right to Counsel program as well. So a lot of you may know that if you get an eviction on your record, it stays there for 8 years. And once you have that eviction on your record, it's sort of like a scarlet letter. Nobody wants to rent to you. So it increases the likelihood of being on the streets. And so, but what we also know is a lot of those cases that end up in eviction court can be solved outside of court. That they don't need to get to that place before maybe the tenant and the landlord just part ways, right? The tenants allowed out of their lease or whatever. So the right to counsel program requires that tenants also have representation when they are going into eviction court. And because we know that most landlords, about 90% of landlords go into eviction court with representation, and only about 3% of tenants go into housing court or go into eviction court with representation. So it's kind of leveling that playing field. And cities that have done this have seen that the number of evictions that end up on people's records actually go down, because those attorneys are often able to work out some kind of deal that makes both of them whole without actually getting that eviction on their record and then making it, next to impossible to be able to find housing in the future. And so all of this kind of fits together to, make sure that we're providing affordable housing in the city, funding it when we know that costs have been going up, and that we're funding the safety net for folks that are kind of on the brink, so that they don't end up out on the streets, that we don't end up with more folks who are unhoused. And this is, a way to do it that is not taxing residents in the city. It's taxing visitors to our city who are coming here. And even with the 3% fee, it's still a lower tax than what the hotels are paying right now. So even, when we do have smaller operators and stuff like that, they're still going to be competitive with the hotels and still be able to charge less than the hotels, because it's not a huge fee that's being charged. It's enough to generate some decent income for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, but it's not so much that it's going to be a burden on people who are booking short-term rentals. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Chat.
Sure.
The question was, how much will be generated annually from this?
That is a great question, and to be honest, we don't know. So right now, there's about, I think, 3,000 listings for Airbnbs, Vrbo, Expedia, all of the different short-term rentals. There's about 3,000 listings in the city. We expect the number of listings to go down as those regulations get in place, and some folks opt to just not either continue in that, or we've put some limits on the amount that can be owned. So it's really hard to tell. We are thinking probably a couple $1 million per year. Right now, we are required to put $5 million minimum per year in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So the goal will be whatever is generated from this, and we'll have, I think, a good idea after 1 year of collecting revenue on it. We'll then go back and we'll update our ordinances to kind of require a larger dollar amount go into Affordable Housing Trust Fund each year.
Could you speak a little to the history or establishment of Affordable Housing Trust Fund? I didn't know it existed. Is it state? Is it city?
It's city. So it is a city fund. And it predates me. So I know it's been been around for a long time. I can't tell you what year it was started, but basically the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, they will do grant applications each year. So if developers are trying to build affordable housing and they need some additional financial support, it can help do that. And it is also the stream of funding that shelters and homeless services are able to access from the city as well. Like I said, right now we're required to put a minimum of $5 million per year into it from the city budget. But when you look at kind of comparable cities, most cities are putting, $20 million a year into their affordable housing trust funds. So I think we have a lot of work to do in increasing the revenue that's going into that, especially as we've seen kind of more folks end up on the streets and have seen, just rental prices in our city go up pretty handily over the last few years. Go ahead.
Is the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, are they giving any money to landlords that are providing affordable housing?
Yes, there's also a landlord application process for affordable housing for like smaller, so it's not just, yeah, so it's not just for the big guys.
How much have they handed out?
That I can't answer off the top of my head, sorry.
There is they have their 2024 NOFA out now. And that, 2024 NOFA is due on October the 19th. And I believe that NOFA, they have like somewhere around like 68, like a little bit over 6 million.
Yeah.
And, so you can go apply for, they have service-related grants, when it comes to subsidies. It's all on the, if you go to the Affordable Housing Commission site with the city of St. Louis, the NOFA will be front page. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Representative. Affordable housing is near and dear to both of our hearts, and it's something that we need a lot more of in this city. And one of the challenges we have right now is the low-income housing tax credits, or LIHTC, is often what developers use to be able to do affordable housing, but our state caps the amount of credits that they will give out each year. So every year we have a lot more projects in the city that apply for those tax credits than can actually get them. And so we see projects sometimes having to wait and apply 3 or 4 times before they get those tax credits. So the more that we can be doing locally to kind of bridge those gaps and make sure some, of these good projects get off the ground, and that we also preserve, currently existing affordable housing, I think is a win-win for the city. Anything else? Well, I appreciate it. I passed out little flyers here that have a little information about all of the different things that you're gonna see, propositions you're going to see from the city, and also some QR codes if you want to read the bill text for any of these things. You can go on directly and nerd out over everything that's there. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, we are at time. Just a reminder, our next neighborhood cleanup is this Saturday at 10 a.m. We have a handful of dates for the flower prepping and planting at Shoto Park. And then our next meeting is Tuesday, October 15th here at the Missouri Foundation for Health. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. That's my state rep, so.